Greetings and salutations, and welcome to another ruckus rampage on Grudge Match Unlimited, the show where your favorite characters from the realms of fiction are brought together for hypothesized slugfests to decide who rules the day. And it's about time we got some giant robot goodness in the Grudge matches, so today's episode finds the two top tech titans and lets them test their mettle against each other. It's the defender of the universe, Lion Force Voltron, against the original Power Ranger giant, the Dino Megazord. Now, both of these combatants are a bit of a departure from the normal Grudge match fare because one of the standing rules of Grudge match has always been that matches have to be one-on-one. No team matches have ever been done before, and both of these giant robots are the coming together of 5 different smaller animal robots. However, it doesn't particularly violate the one-on-one rule because for the vast majority of the fights that both of these giant robots have been in, they always fight as one being. They spend very, very little time in their smaller, singular robot animal forms, and they very quickly come together into their giant humanoid robot forms and tend to fight in that way. And those are the versions we're going to be comparing in this Grudge match. The actual Lion Force Voltron versus the Dino Megazord. So taking a look at Voltron first, the American version, first created in 1984, was a rebranding of an earlier Japanese anime called Beast King Go Lion, which was created in 1981. Voltron was formerly a sentient robot centuries ago, but was broken into 5 different lion robots as punishment for challenging the gods, and was also to teach the giant robot humility because he would have to rely on the skills of human pilots in order to come together once again. The 5 smaller robots that Voltron is made up of are all lion robots, and there's a black lion, red lion, green, blue, and yellow lion. When they all come together, each one of the lions forms a different limb. The black lion forms the central portion and becomes Voltron, the defender of the universe. As Voltron, he's fought many giant monsters and other giant mechanical foes, and to do this, he uses a variety of abilities inherent to him. Most common of which is the Voltron Blazing Sword. Voltron will put his hands together and pull a sword seemingly out of thin air, and this is a very, very powerful weapon, and his primary weapon that is usually able to slice right through virtually any enemy, no matter how durable they seem to be, with relative ease. But he also has a few other abilities that are occasionally witnessed throughout the course of the series. The ability to fire energy blasts from his eyes. Of course, Voltron is able to fly, and many times he will fight in outer space, so he's capable of going both into a planetary atmosphere as well as into space, and has a bit of semi-sentience as well left over from the days when he was a complete sentient being in and of himself. Using all these skills and abilities, he has become one of the most enduring robot symbols in all of fandom. The Dino Megazord, the first ever Megazord of the Power Ranger series, was first debuted in America in 1993 with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Much like Voltron, that was also taken from a previously existing Japanese show called Sentai Zyuranger, which originally appeared in 1992. So the Dino Megazord was the very first Power Ranger giant robot, and there was a slew of other ones that came after it. But the Dino Megazord was comprised of 5 different dinosaur or ancient era animals. And that was the Mastodon, Pterodactyl, Triceratops, Saber-toothed Tiger, and Tyrannosaurus. When they first formed together, they originally took on a tank form. So this was a form where all the beast animal heads were represented on the front and could fire laser blasts from each one of their faces, as well as having 2 large cannons mounted on either side. However, they never stayed in this form for very long because it was not very maneuverable, and they wanted to have more close quarters fighting capabilities, so they would very quickly go to their Dino Megazord form. The Megazord's primary weapon in this form is a sword that he would call down from space. It would land in the earth, and the Megazord would pick it up and be able to wield it, as well as occasionally the Mastodon head would be used as a shield in the other hand. This sword is much like Voltron's Blazing Sword in that it was pretty easily able to slice through any enemy, and whenever the Megazord would call down the sword and start to use it, that would pretty much signal the end of the fight, because it was always a finishing move, slicing right through the giant monsters the Dino Megazord would fight against. So both of these characters, Voltron and the Dino Megazord, have seemingly the same go-to maneuver in order to end their opponent, slicing right through them, as well as both having a few other abilities in terms of energy blasts that they would not so often use but could break out when they needed to. So having taken a look at the backstory, skills, and abilities of these two giant robots, it's time to decide what would happen if they were to collide in one-on-one competition and have to declare a winner. That winner's going to be Voltron. The reason the Defender of the Universe Voltron is going to walk away victorious in this Grudge match Unlimited is for a few reasons. While the Dino Megazord does have one additional form in the Tank Megazord form, which would seem to give him more long-range destructive capabilities, that's not exactly the case because Voltron has some long-range abilities of his own. As previously mentioned, the Eye Blast energy beams from the eyes could be used as a long-range weapon, but also the extreme maneuverability of Voltron and the capability of flight means that even at a long range, Voltron can close that distance relatively quickly. Additionally, in the subsequent rebooting of the Voltron series that happened back in 2011, Voltron had the power to reconfigure himself and change from having the black line in the central form to one of the other lines being in the central form, and that would give him additional weapons and abilities, such as when the red line was in the central position, he'd have magma pistols, the green line in the central position, a boomerang shield, blue line would give the Titanic Trident, and the yellow line would give rock-wrecking maces. Now, some people might not want to consider the reboot as canon, and that's fine because even without it, Voltron still has the greater maneuverability with the flight, long-range attacks himself with the Eye Blast, and a special key factor that would give Voltron an even better edge is that even with the human pilots driving Voltron, he still has a bit of the sentience that he once had. This means that the Voltron robot can sort of drive himself. He has to have human pilots inside of him directing the majority of his actions, but he can do a bit of acting on his own and also kind of guide the pilots to the best course of action. So he has a bit of semi-sentience going on, whereas the Dino Megazord is 100% controlled by the Rangers inside of him, doesn't have that going for him. So with these things going for Voltron, the semi-sentience, the long-range attacks he has himself, the greater maneuverability with the flight, and the possible usage of the other configurations, bringing other weapons and abilities into the fray, is going to put Voltron head and shoulders above the Dino Megazord and the winner of this Grudge match Unlimited. So message me down below, let me know what you thought of the outcome of this fight, and as always, any suggestions for future matches. We'll see you next time on the next edition of Grudge Match Unlimited.